Welcome back. Inspiring stories about real people making a real difference. A doctor who developed a landmark program to combat inner city violence. A high-profile TV anchor who left his job to run an organization that pairs older Americans with students in public schools. Those are just two of the stories among a tapestry woven by Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof. I sat down with Nick at the Miami Book Fair, asked him how he came up with the title of his new book.
Well, our previous book was Half the Sky, which came from a Chinese expression that women hold up half the sky. And so we turned here also to a Chinese expression from a Chinese writer, Lu Xun, who said that hope is like a path in the countryside. At first there is nothing, and then because people walk this way again and again, a path appears.
And the path in this case, philanthropy, helping others.
How to make a difference, that's right.
Scripture talks about a cheerful giver. It would seem that you and your wife in this book are talking about being an informed giver.
Informed and cheerful, both.
Sure.
And and Scripture also talks about how it is more blessed to give than to receive. And it turns out there is really modern neuroscience behind that. That indeed, giving is something that makes us happier, that improves our markers of health, that makes us longer lived, and we can simultaneously make a difference in other people's lives and in our own.
From something as noble as philanthropy to something as ignoble as my old calling in politics, has philanthropy become too politicized in some cases?
There are various kinds of philanthropy, and as all of America has become politically polarized, indeed some of that has crept into philanthropy, as it has to all aspects of life. One element is advocacy, and I believe in advocacy, giving our voice to help those who are voiceless. But sure, in some cases that has become politicized, but I don't think that should undermine the basic power of philanthropy to transform lives, to extend lives, to create opportunity in this country and abroad.
And that power can multiply through information. Now, an interesting situation we were talking about before the interview. Bill and Melinda Gates, with what they have done, we understand they saw an article from you in the New York Times that served as a catalyst for what they're doing.
I believe that's the case. You should get it from them. In the news business, we're essentially in the lighting business. We shine a light on things, and if that can move readers to want to make a difference, whether they be your average reader in the suburbs or some billionaires in Seattle, if it can move people to try to make a difference on causes, then boy, that's why I went into journalism, to try to make a difference.
And so in one sense, billionaires see it dramatically, like Bill and Melinda Gates. On the other hand, the philanthropist down the block, the everyday person. And back to the notion of information. Have we moved now to the days of micro charity? One person, one endeavor, one mission. Are we seeing a change in the way we give?
I think we're seeing a huge change in the way we give, but we still need some large charities that have economies of scale, that have professionalism, but we also need garage startups. It's just like the industrial economy. You need these Fortune 100 companies and you need the tiny startups. But I think what has changed is that we have new platforms that provide a certain amount of accountability so we can see where our money is going. There's also much more of business influence in charity, much more emphasis on metrics, on cost effectiveness, on evaluation. And I think much more research so we can be confident now about what does work, what does have an impact in a way that we couldn't before.
Speaking of research, you have a book, over 330 pages of prose dealing with philanthropy. To research a book like this, which is down the block but also around the world, how did you and your wife get this done?
It was a privilege to be able to go and see some extraordinary people doing incredible things. When I first began traveling around the world, blindness was one of the things that I found most wrenching. So many middle-aged people who were traumatized by being blind, the indignity of being blind, had to pull a child out of school to lead them around as beggars. And we saw a simple intervention through Helen Keller International, a trachoma operation, $40 gives them their sight back. $40. And people ask, why I'm not depressed by what I see. I mean, how can you see a $40 operation to give somebody back their eyesight and not just feel uplifted?
What I also noticed about the early chapters of the book, to a certain degree, this was self-discovery in terms of family history for your dad and the way he ended up in Oregon, and also a physical affliction for your mom. Could you tell us about those two things?
Sure, that's right. People always say, well, anything we do is going to be a drop in the bucket. And yeah, it will be. But my dad was a World War II refugee, and he was sponsored by a family in Portland, Oregon to come to the U.S. It didn't solve the refugee problem. It didn't make a dent in it. It really was a drop in the bucket. But it was transformative for my dad and obviously for me too. So I believe in drops in the bucket. And one of the people have this skepticism about, can I really make a difference? And one of the examples we give is of club foot, which is one of the most common deformities at birth, where the feet are turned inward. And typically a child like that abroad can't walk, can't go to school, can't marry, becomes a beggar. It turned out, I only found out about this as we were writing the book, that my mom had club foot as a baby. But in this country, if you're born with clubfoot, it's corrected at birth, and my mom is athletic. She's still marching around at the age of 82. And so we followed a donor in California. We followed her check that went to a hospital in Mali and gave this 2-year-old girl in Mali her life back by correcting her clubfoot. Again, that's just inspiring what we can accomplish.
A book of miracles or a book of hard work?
Well, both. I think one of the problems is that too often we donate to those who ask, and the people who are good at asking aren't always those who are good at spending. So I think we do have to do some research. We list some organizations at the end that are doing really good work. But if you do that research, then you truly can accomplish miracles.
And once again, the name of the book, A Path Appears. Nicholas Kristof, Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times columnist, collaborating with his wife, Cheryl Woodon, to write that book. It was good to talk to Nick at the Miami Book Fair, and the Miami Book Fair continues in Miami through this weekend. America's Forum continues. When we come back, we'll have a little panel discussion. Ben Wickler on the left, Javier Manjarres on the right. The subject, surprise, surprise, the president's announcement on amnesty scheduled for later tonight, which we'll also cover here on Newsmax TV. We're coming back following this Newsmax Now update.